Okay, now we're streaming onto Facebook. I come to Facebook, wait for it to pick up here, and it has. And now I say go live now. Good evening, everybody. This is Brendon Baillod. I'm the president of the Wisconsin Underwater Archaeology Association, and I'm also the administrator of the Great Lakes Shipwreck Research Group. I'd like to welcome you all to tonight's program. It's a really exciting one. It's a live reveal of a newly discovered Wisconsin shipwreck. Um, we're pretty excited to present it to you. We're going to give it about a minute to allow people to start joining. If there's bandwidth issues, there's not much we can do about it. I've got a full gigabit internet, but we are proxying through a couple of layers here. We're using BeLive platform and then broadcasting on Facebook Live. So do hang in there with us. And we will get started. This is not the first time we've done this. We did a live reveal when we found the schooner Trinidad a couple of years ago, and that went pretty well, so we decided to try it again. We also did a similar program when we found the Margaret Muir and the John Evanson, so hopefully this will go as well or better than those did. All right. I'm just going to do a quick check and see if we have any viewers yet, and as usual, Facebook doesn't show me, so we're just going to run. All right, we go ahead and start the program. All right, Wisconsin's newest shipwreck revealed. This is pretty exciting for us. This was a little different than some of our past projects and some of the past shipwrecks we've found. And you're going to find out why. What you see here is a 860 kilohertz image of the new wreck that we found. It was made in rough seas, as you can see by some of the wave marks. We did this with our deep vision, deep view side scan sonar. I'd like to throw a shout out to our friends from Deep Vision in Linköping, Sweden, who gave us a generous grant to help us purchase that really wonderful sonar. And that's kind of what made this find more possible, I guess we'll say. All right. Let's talk about the project. This was a citizen science project, and it was a prototype. What do I mean by that? Well, the Wisconsin Underwater Archaeology Association, if you don't know, is a 501c3 nonprofit that works to provide opportunities for the public to participate in underwater archaeology. And we decided as a group, our board of directors, that we wanted to bring the experience of searching for a lost ship to the public and educate people about the historical research and the technology that we use when we go looking for these ships. And we wanted to really try to locate a historically important lost ship and ensure that it was documented and surveyed correctly. So that's no small order, to do this, because we're an underwater archaeology group. We can't just go out there without, any purview. Part of what WUA's requirements are is that when we do that, we get a public lands permit from the state archaeologist. So we did that. We asked them if we could bring 20 members of the public out on a search expedition to find a previously unknown shipwreck, and to ensure that the site was surveyed and documented pre-disturbance. Well, in the case of this wreck, there was a little concern just because she had a pretty high profile, particularly in the local community, and we didn't want the word to get out ahead of time and have people following the state's rather unique survey vessel, the Dawn Treader, out to the site and then possibly go out there and have divers monkeying around on it before we could actually do a photogrammetry model. So we actually asked all of the participants to sign an archaeological stewardship agreement, which basically said that you can talk about it with your families and stuff, but don't put it out on social media until we're done. Until we've got the model done, until we're ready to go live. And we were remarkably successful. I'd really like to thank everybody that was involved in the project for their help in keeping this shipwrecks, out of the public eye while the state did that survey and created that model. We are going to release this to the public, and within the next year, people will be able to dive it. So, a win-win. We had some challenges. Bringing 20 people out, we had to find a big enough boat, and we really want to thank our friends, the Friends of Plum and Pilot Islands, and their vessel, the Shoreline, for their help. We chartered their vessel, and over 2 days, we brought 20 citizen scientists out to experience what it's like to find a new shipwreck. Um, the outcomes were pretty surprising. We wanted to just take them out there and show them how the sausage was made. This wreck had been the subject of about half a dozen previous searches that were unsuccessful. It had become something of a ghost ship because it had been, so many attempts had been made to find it. And despite low expectations, we ran it over. We couldn't believe it. And you're going to get to see the moment. We were able to successfully survey the site pre-disturbance without public dissemination. This site's going to be nominated to the National Register, and we're thinking we're going to do another citizen science project with this particular act or this particular model, if you will. So it was a great success. Here's some of the people that were out on the boat, as you can see, with the side scan sonars. These are not professional archaeologists. These are WUA members. Most of them don't work in maritime history or underwater archaeology. And here's the Shoreline, the vessel that we went out on, Jim Robinson's old boat. So I think you can start to get an idea where we might be. All right, the moment you've all been waiting for. What did we find? And I think many of you have guessed. We located the long-sought schooner F.J. King off of Door County. She sits off of Cana Island Lighthouse. This is a photo that we believe is her that I located in my own collection of stereo views. This particular view, we believe, shows the F.J. King about 1884 at Oswego, New York. And behind it, you see a beautiful 3D photogrammetry model, courtesy of Zach Whitrock and the Wisconsin Historical Society. And we're going to give you a flyover of that at the end. Why did we search for this particular wreck, though? And no, it wasn't just the $1,000 reward from Neptune's Dive Club. She ranked in the top 10 on my list of findable Wisconsin missing ships. So if you've watched my Lost Leviathan series, you know that for 30 years, I've built a database of all the ships still missing on the Great Lakes that didn't, go ashore or hit a reef, right? Ships that sank out in the lake and haven't been found. And in Wisconsin waters, she's up there. This ship is in the top 10, maybe the top 5 of ships that weren't found. Why did I rank her so high? Well, because I thought she could be found. Now, at least 5 serious and experienced searchers had gone out and looked for her, and a lot of these guys are my friends. And it wasn't due to a lack of skill, lack of equipment, or lack of experience. But most of their searches were done 10, 15, 20, 30, even 40 years ago. And a lot more information is available. And so I want to be clear that, yeah, I do get, I won't say lucky, but, we found a lot of wrecks in the last few years. It's not so much because we're better than these guys were. It's because we re-examine these things from the ground up, and we have, new sources, and we have, frankly, better equipment. I thought that the search for this ship would benefit from a fresh start for that reason, that we were going to go back to the beginning, and we were not going to look at any previous accounts. We weren't going to talk to the commercial fishermen who claim that they've brought stuff up in their nets. And I know they have, but there was no net on this wreck. This ship also had a high level of community interest. There are people, who emailed me and said that they thought the state might be putting metal netting over it to keep people from finding it because it had been so missing for so long. She also is pretty close to port. This isn't one of these ships that's 20 miles out in the lake, right? So we thought, this would be a good public history project. And incidentally, Neptune's is honoring the $1,000 reward. And it's going to the WUAA to help us fund a similar search next year that the public is also going to be able to participate in. So thank you to Neptune's Dive Club and to Jim Bay in particular for that. They issued this reward quite a few years ago, and they didn't have to honor it. All right. Technology made this search easier. Why? Well, last year we got 2 generous grants. One was from the from the Racine Lighthouse and Maritime Preservation Society. The other was from an anonymous donor in the Chicagoland area who had an ancestor that served on the submarines built at Manitowoc, and she really liked the work we were doing. and so gave us a generous grant. And from that, we were able to buy this really nice deep vision, deep eye sonar with 200 meters of cable. And that was the ideal tool because we knew that this wreck was going to be in 120 to 180 feet of water, possibly opened up on the bottom. And we were going to look in the summer, and we knew there was going to be thermocline. So we needed to get that fish down deep. We couldn't use a short cable model with only 60 feet of cable. We really needed something also that had high resolution that could do both range and detail. And so this new sonar that Deep Vision provided us was really. The other thing that I do that's helped a lot, make it a lot easier to find wrecks in recent years, is to use Google Earth and delay transparencies of historical charts over them. So basically, we match the shoreline up in the streets and the roads and things that existed in 1870 with Google Earth, and you can see where the shipping lanes were, and you can see the water depths that they thought they were in at the time. This really helps because we can lay out a search grid and we say, well, we thought we were 6 miles off of Canna Island Light, or I thought I saw something 4 miles off Canna Island Light. That enables us to really measure things and get GPS coordinates. And if somebody says, well, we think she went down in 25 fathoms, this shows where they thought 25 fathoms was at the time, not where it is now. So that helps a lot. The other big thing was that UA was able to buy a couple of chasing ROVs, or at least one big chasing ROV. And these remote operated vehicles allowed our participants to pilot the ROVs. After we found this wreck, our participants got to take the ROV back, and they were the first human beings to set eyes on the F.J. King since 1886. We were able to get a quick identification. We could see right away that the ship had iron ore on it. It had gone down by the bow, just like the survivors had said. The stern blew off, open, so pretty clear that we had found the F.J. King. But the key wasn't the technology, and I keep saying this in all these posts I make online. In this case, it was the original research. New sources for shipwreck research have become available just in the last few years, and some of them I found myself. Obviously, online historical newspapers are way better than they used to be, right? So you can now go out and read these, on newspapers.com. If you have a subscription, you can easily, bring up hundreds of news articles about a given ship's career. But a new thing are these Customs House wreck reports. I found these myself down at the National Archives in Chicago and initiated a project with the Association for Great Lakes Maritime History to digitize them all. And the F.J. King had a wreck report. Lo and behold. The National Archives also has all the Admiralty Court records down there, starting in the 1840s. Thousands and thousands of Admiralty cases for Great Lakes shipwrecks. There's also much better online historical navigation. Easy to get to. And there's also much more accurate modern bathymetry charts of the area, so the depths are much better known. So, as I mentioned, we made the decision to reinvestigate this from scratch. One of the things that we could have done, but we really made it a point not to do, was to follow up with commercial fishermen. We knew that the Hickey brothers claimed that they had been over something out there. We knew that a few other guys claimed they were on something. And, we heard that it was completely broken up. We heard it was 180 feet. We heard it was off North Bay. A lot of conflicting accounts. So we thought, no, we're going to take a fresh look at the news accounts. And we're going to reanalyze this. And we found two accounts that were opposed to each other. The big one is the wreck report. And he says here, 35 miles off from Canna Island Lake, Michigan. Down here, he says, she sprung a leak off of, I can't read the bay, off of Sturgeon Bay, and then they had run back, and she went down, he says, say 25 fathoms of water. So I asked myself, well, when did this happen? This happened at 1 a.m. This guy was out in pitch blackness. Did he really know how far he was off Canna Island? Because I found this, and I consider this to be the smoking gun that enabled us to find this wreck. In fact, it blew my mind when I saw this. My emoji. Captain Krez yesterday received a letter from W.A. Sanderson, keeper of the Can Island Lights, saying that the spars of the schooner F.J. King, which foundered off Canada last week, have broken off and are sticking 8 to 10 feet out of the water, being held fast by the rigging. As she is directly in the course of vessels, mast, I want to look out for her. Here's the part that nobody else seems to have seen. He says she lies X miles east by X miles off the light. And he doesn't just give miles, he gives bearings here. So, what the heck? That was something that nobody that I know had ever seen before. And this wasn't in some secret newspaper. This appeared in the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel and in the Green Bay Press Gazette, but nobody had noticed it. So our goal was to rule out the Can Island Lighthouse Keeper's account because it was made in broad daylight. He saw it for a whole week. He notified the revenue cutter service to come and remove the masts, although they never did. The masts actually just fell on their own. But we had this in a number of different accounts. So that was the smoking gun. That is how we found the F.J. King. It was this newspaper article that it seems to have been missed. Now, I want to tell you, too, it's not like we were like, oh, yeah, we're going to go motor out there and find the F.J. King. Our attitude was that we were going to rule that out, right? We were going to rule out that account, not to cover the entire area of possibility, because the entire area of possibility out there is about 8 by 5 miles, about 40 square miles. We'd have been out there for a month of Sundays. We just wanted to say, hey, let's put a pin in the map where the lighthouse keeper said the ship was, and we're going to draw a 2 mile by 2 mile grid around it, and then we're going to scan it. So we set the sonar to 650 feet per channel, which we thought was conservative because we thought this wreck was going to be broken to heck. She was carrying iron ore, and when an iron ore carrier goes down by the bow, like they described, and hits the bottom hard, she usually becomes fillet of schooner. The sides open right up. We expect her to look kind of like the Margaret Muir that we found last year. We were seeing pretty well. We had this about 250 feet of cable out, so the cable was down deep. The towfish was down below the thermocline. And we were kind of seeing wall to wall. We all got out there on the first day of the search, Saturday. We had started at about 9 a.m. We were on our second pass at 10:30 a.m., about 2.5 hours into the search, when we ran over this. And that didn't leave much doubt in the imagination. You could see the hatches on it. You could see everything. And I'll be honest with you, that site, that wreck was less than a half a mile from the pin where we dropped, where the lighthouse keeper reported that wreck. It was hiding in plain sight. When we found it, it was dramatic. I mean, we then did multiple high resolution passes just to get archaeological data, and then we anchored the vessel, and we put the ROVs down. So I'm going to play you some video. Bear with me. I hope that this comes through okay. This is live. Thanks to Don Nelson for recording this. Smokes.
That is actually really well.
Happen next. This is to it with the ROVs because we ran out of cable. We were out of cable. Visibility was low that day. But it was pretty dramatic. And the whole crew was just geeked that we had found this thing. We couldn't believe it. We were pinching ourselves. But based on the damage pattern, we could see the iron ore. We pretty much knew we had the F.J. King. And, what was just a prototype project turned into a successful project. So I'm going to ask a good friend of ours and one of the WUA members and docents and researchers who was on the boat, Kevin Cullen, to tell you about the history of this wreck. Kevin not only is a WUA member, but Kevin's also the executive director of the Wisconsin Maritime Museum. And he was doing this in his capacity as a WUA member, but we really appreciate his willingness to come on and tell us about the history. Welcome, Kevin.
Good evening, Brendon. Thanks for inviting me. What a fun reveal. And this is an incredible story. So yeah, looking forward to digging in a little bit about its construction and some of that history as it is in the context of Great Lakes maritime history. So yeah, on a weekend, I think this is 2 in a row now for me, Brendon. 2 weekends in 2 years where we find a shipwreck that we've been looking for a long time. So, right, the F.J. King, Francis J. King, was named after, and it was built in Toledo, Ohio. So, Toledo, Ohio in 1867, like many cities around the nation, were coming out of the Civil War. And this is a huge boom that's happening across not only the Great Lakes region, but nationally as the unification process is happening. So, really, what we're looking to, in this, where the actual wreck lies today is quite far from home of where it was built. And the builder was George R. Rogers in 1867 in the city of Toledo, Ohio. So on the actual across from the Swan Creek is where it was constructed. And the lithograph there that you see, Thompson, the state underwater archaeologist, who you'll see here shortly in the slides, who went out and identified this, has really dug into the research. I mean, archivally for turning this into a National Register nomination, because as you'll see, it's tremendous. As it connects, as you can see, the railroads, this is an 1895 map. But basically, that's roughly where the build site was for the F.J. King. And it was for the Wilcox brothers of Toledo. And then that was their first builders. They were basically, it was a commission house. They moved goods up and down the coasts across the Great Lakes, all kinds of commodities. And they had a chandlery and a sail loft. So if you look at the Sanborn map there, Brendon, if you zoom in on that, the one that shows where it was, right on the waterfront, on the Maumee River. So the circle there indicates where it was. It was on Madison Street. And if you zoom in one more, you'll actually see you'll see the word sail loft as you zoom into that circle. So, really what this sets the scene for is there was interesting F.J. King, Francis J. King, who it was named for. His brother, Augustus King, was actually the mayor of Toledo at that time. So this is a very prominent, basically they're, you could say, Yankees. Their father was originally from Boston, who was born during the Revolutionary War, and then his mother from Savannah, Georgia. Now, F.J. King, Francis J. King, he had there were 7 boys and 5 girls, so 12, a family of 12. When I read that statistic, it struck me as interesting and maybe a coincidence because I too am one of 12, 7 boys and 5 girls, though Irish and not English in this case of the Kings, tracing their ancestry, of course, back to England and the Celtic Isles, the British Isles. But aristocratic family, certainly had means and were well connected. And, part of the history is just to understand, how these vessels served the trade on the Great Lakes, connecting port facilities and also railroad hubs. And that, the trade of the Toledo Railroad out then further to the east, that was one way that commodities moved, but most of these goods in large quantities were also moving on these schooners. Now, 1867, it's kind of that height of schooner building. She was 144 feet long as a canaler to fit through the Welland Canal. For those not familiar, that opened in 1829 in Canada versus 1825 for the Erie Canal, which is, of course, 200 years ago today. In terms of dimensions, as I said, 144 was also 26.1 feet in diameter. So its beam was quite wide. And they maxed it out that way in order to get through the canal as much space as you can fit goods onto. as well as then depth of hold 11 feet. So she was gross tonnage of 200. So, two masted when it was built, and then modified almost the year before she sank in 1885, converted to a three-masted schooner. So again, these schooners of this period are essentially like the freight carriers on the freeways of today. So the Schneider trucks and you name it, carrying these bulk commodities, although much more. As you can see, the life of a canaler, it had a very actually, um, clean record when it came to her service history. Almost 20 years old, 19 years before she wrecked in 1886. So over that period of time, there is such a great paper trail in the newspapers of any port in the community of the Great Lakes would register, and he'd be able to research what was coming. And so me being here in Green Bay, but I work at the Wisconsin Maritime Museum in Manitowoc, and there it's the largest craft malt facility in the world by Breese Malting today. So massive ships are still coming and going, but so did F.J. King in the 1880s, made frequent calls there to bring malt from the raw malting facility to breweries in Pennsylvania. So the favorite beverage of the era, and arguably still today, beer. So that's just one of the commodities. There was all kinds of things from coal, and then eventually ending its life with a load, in this case of iron ore, when it was bound from Escanaba to Chicago. And this was in September of 1886. So it was there was a stiff breeze out there when she left. In fact, I was looking at the research. I believe it's today, on September 23rd or September 13th of 1867. She leaves Escanaba and is starting to sail toward Chicago. And by the time she ends up off of, Cana Island, as well as where she wrecked. But digging into, if you look into that, Brendon, zooming in on some of the final wreck reports, and this kind of echoes what you just spoke about with, how you find, information. In this case, the wreck report describes, where roughly the vessel was, who owned it in its last life, and it had partial ownership, and it was actually quite degraded for that time. When you think about it, it was William Griffin of New York and Dunham, J.S. Dunham of Chicago, so it was partial owners. Home ported in Ogdensburg, New York. So it's kind of at its last legs, as it were, as a vessel. Some theories are maybe it could have been the fact that adding that third mast that would have allowed more propulsion, sail square footage, would then propel 600 tons of iron ore, in this case all the way down Lake Michigan. But the seams are likely have opened up, and or they couldn't keep up with the pumps, and all of that is then documented. Certainly in the captain's account, Captain Griffin, but then also then by Captain Sanderson, who was a couple days later. He was the Cana Island lighthouse keeper, who reported the tops of the masts were protruding from the water surface. And that bit of information, as Brendon showed then with the emoji of exactly roughly how far, indicated, okay, we could do some math and, put a box around this at a certain depth. And within the second transect, who knew, this incredible site reveals itself right below the hull. So, that history is, again, part of just what we're seeing in global trade to America in the 1860s through 1880s, and then ultimately what the economy of the Great Lakes were moving at that period speaks to the population growth. So when it was built, Toledo was 24,000 people, just shy of 25,000 people in Toledo in 1867. By 1880, the population doubled. It was 50,000, over 50,000. And that doesn't include people coming and going on the waterfront. So it was bustling across all of these communities. And really it was, again, to maximize the size of this vessel. They were using wood that was, in some cases, 70 feet long oak lumber, as well as up to 44 inches in diameter. That is an astounding log that you're milling to create these very, very strong, extreme, as they call them, canalers. So that's kind of some of that history that I guess getting too bogged down. There's a lot of research out there on wisconsinshipwrecks.org. You can see, in fact, if you zoom in on I think that stereo view, Brendon, just to the bow of what we think is potentially F.J. King when she still had two masts only. That was a year before she was remasted for $3,000. You start to see the anchor hanging off the side there. You'll see the big wooden stock and the two hooks on the bow and starboard. And the dimensions there really speak to then the photogrammetry model that you are about to, you've already seen and you can zoom in on now and really analyze this incredible archaeological site just off of Door County in Lake Michigan that was just now, after 139 years, reveals itself to the world. So we're so pleased to be able to share this with the public in a way that now the state and now as a Wisconsin Historical Society can list this on the State Register of Historic Places. I know Tammy is actively doing that as we speak, Tamara Thompson and their team in Madison, and then ultimately to the National Register of Historic Places, which will likely happen in due course. So we're so lucky to have these underwater museums. These are cultural treasures for us to all share, and the internet is just another way of doing that. So I look forward to digging into the details and learning more about this history. So I'll turn it back to Brendon.
Thanks so much, Kevin. A couple of quick things I noticed too while I was putting together this hull valuation. One of the things I saw is that her hull value in class dropped dramatically and quickly, even though they kept working on her. And one of the things that was really kind of caught my eye was that in 1886 she hadn't carried an iron ore cargo in a long time, according to Tammy Thompson's research. It looked like it had been maybe a year or two. She had been carrying light cargoes. So the first time she had carried a heavy cargo like that, and only the year before she had been classed down to B1 and only $4,500. So kind of toward the end of her life, and they rebuilt her. But the question I wonder about is, they added another deck, they put on another mast. Did they replank and caulk her? I would guess not. The other thing that I thought that was sort of interesting is that in December of '69 was the first time she ever went through the Welland Canal. So the first 2 years of her career, she never even went onto Lake Ontario. They try to get her to the Welland Canal, and they can't fit her in the lock. So they pull her out and cut the corners of her stern off to get her to fit through, which I thought was sort of interesting. And then the only other thing I'll mention too, one of the differences between the wreck port and the wreck is still in well over 100 feet of water, but it's nowhere near 6 miles out. And that's the biggest reason why I think people didn't find her, is that these previous wreck hunters were out there, in the deep water and in 25 fathoms where the captain said the ship was. But turned out she was almost exactly where the lightkeeper put her. All right. Let's talk about the survey work that out of the coolest part of it. And I've talked about this before. What do you do when you find an historic shipwreck? Part of the problem that used to happen in the past a lot is that wreck hunters were kind of like dogs that chased cars. If they caught the thing, it usually broke their neck. Nowadays, we try to have a plan and agreements in place before we even begin searching. We know kind of why we want to find this thing and what we want the outcome to be, right? We want to do public education. We want to make it available to the community. These wrecks are owned by the people of Wisconsin. The state holds them in stewardship for us, but these are owned by the people, and we like to tell the stories of these wrecks because we're maritime history buffs, right? So we usually get involved with the state where we can, right? If we think that state and federal resources will help us, we'll get them involved. But we do a lot of research. But the big thing we want to do is make sure that the wreck's condition is recorded pre-disturbance, and that we limit dissemination of information until the documentation is complete. I've said it many times that anonymous shipwrecks are the most vulnerable shipwrecks. People won't think twice about tearing something off of an old hull that doesn't have a name. And once it's got a name and a story and is part of the local community's history and is on the National Register, people aren't going to take stuff off the wreck. So we try to teach the community about that. We try to create awareness among civic and history groups. So this wreck, as Kevin said, is going to be on the National Register, and we're going to release the GPS for this sometime early next year as soon as she's on the register. And you're going to be able to go dive this wreck, just like, frankly, all the other wrecks we found. We believe in that these are owned by the people of Wisconsin, and the people of Wisconsin should see them. So we want to thank, in particular, Tammy Thompson and Zach Whitrock and Bob LaViolette for going out and doing a survey of this site. Bob, Jake, and I went out with them and were surface support, and Tammy took these beautiful pictures just underneath the stern of the F.J. King is one of her hatches. She was wire rigged. I don't know if she started life that way, but she finished life that way, though that's her wire rigging still on the deck. You get damage to her bow. It's really taken apart on the one side where she hit. She went down, we think, on an angle by the bow and hit on her starboard quarter pretty hard, collapsing that part. But one of the most dramatic things is that the stern area is blown out, the sides and the top, and the transom is sort of sitting up there on its own without any support. Kind of interesting thing. We have a lot of other neat features on the bow. You've got this large windlass. You can see the fluke of an air. It was never so good down there, but here's the capstan. We don't know if there's a brass capstan plate down there, but there is. Here's a beautiful shot of, I think it's Zach, or maybe Bob LaViolette looking down into the cabin, lighting it up. So there are a lot more of these Tammy took, but these are courtesy of her. The beautiful photos. Tammy's an excellent underwater photographer. And of course, Zach Whitrock created this amazing 3D photogrammetry model. And I'm going to go ahead and play it for you. I noticed that the audio clicks out a little bit when we play it. Hopefully it's not too jagged. I'm just going to leave it at this lower frame rate so that we don't use too much bandwidth. I do have full gigabit internet, fiber, but this is going through proxying through a few different layers. So here you go. Zach's flyover. There you can bottom of the lake. After that, we take a complete dive. And the wheel is right behind it. There's actually more than this. Let's see if it picks up again. There you. It's amazing how blown out that stern is. Right and intact on the bottom. Articulated today. So some stills, some really nice stills of the model down here that show what condition she's in. So feel free to go up to Sketchfab if you want to and take a look at it. Just go up to Sketchfab and search for F.J. King. All right. So let's talk a little bit about how this was all accomplished, because we have some people with us tonight who are on the boat that we'd like to interview. But before we do that, I want to make a call out to everyone who participated and who was with us. So I acted as the principal investigator and kind of put this whole thing together, did the research and thought it up, along with Bob Jake, who's off outside of WUA as my wreck hunting partner. But he and Kevin Cullen both helped out on the boat as WUA docents, along with Scott Reimer, who was also a WUA board member. The four of us, kind of ran the sonars and the made sure that the ROVs were put together. But everyone on the boat got to participate. Everyone got to, help interpret the sonar. They got to help put the sonars together, deploy the sonar, pull in the tow fish, all that kind of work. So they got to really participate in making the sausage, so to speak. First of all, though, I don't want to forget our friends from the Friends of Plum and Pilot Islands, the crew of the Shoreline. Styles Meredith, who you're going to hear from shortly, was our one of our captains. He did a wonderful job of piloting this vessel and running all of our weird search grids, especially when we found it, going and getting the high resolution sonar in tight quarters and keeping a straight course when we were taking some of those higher resolution images. Also to Scotty Nelson from the crew, another excellent captain and pilot. And then Dawn Nelson was our crew. She also did a wonderful job. So thank you to Friends in Plum and Pilot Island for the Shoreline. Um, Other people who participated, I'm going to call out the names. Derek Hager was one of our citizen scientists. These are all WUA members. Will Peters joined us, Joe Watermolen, Kyle Wiedemann, Dan Klewine. Dan was one of the first people to see the wreck when he piloted the ROV down. Kevin McConaughey, who was also a hockey player on my hockey team, in addition to being a WUA member. Bob Ryan, Matt Ludvigsen joined us. Janet Defnet, who was a past WUA director, came out and joined us. David Siegel, Michael Hansen, Lisa Gibson, Leo Oshasky, who is another WUA citizen scientist and is now working at the Wisconsin Maritime Museum. And a special thanks to Caitlin Luby from the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. Caitlin joined us at our invitation. She's always been very interested in Great Lakes shipwrecks and has covered a lot of the shipwrecks that we found in the past. So we liked her work so much that we asked her to come out and gave her an exclusive on this story. And last, but certainly not least, probably the people who really make this happen most of all, Tammy Thompson, our state underwater archaeologist, and she was the leader of the survey team and really the lead researcher who put together just an amazing amount of information about this vessel to write the National Register nomination. Bob LaViolette, a local diver and state Wisconsin Historical Society volunteer who was on the survey team. And then, of course, Zach Whitrock, who was also a survey diver and an amazing photogrammetry artist. That's everybody who participated. So you can see this was the crew. We collected high resolution imagery of the sonar of the wreck, uh, and then of course this is the survey crew. I'm going to take a picture. There we have Bob LaViolette, Zach Whitrock, Tammy Thompson, and Bob. Of course, these are the crew from Friends of Pilot Island. So thanks again to everybody who made this happen. One of the things that I really wanted to do with this, though, is I want to give some of our citizen scientists a chance to talk about what it was like to be out there. And we've got them, they've been patiently waiting. So I particularly want to hear from Styles Meredith what his experience was like out there. So I'm going to go ahead and put him on camera here. And Styles, can you hear me okay?
I can. Can you hear me?
Awesome, I sure can. Styles, again, thank you so much for piloting the boat and for all the work on the shoreline. Uh, why don't you tell us what it was like out there for you, and anything else you want to share about the experience?
You bet. Thanks a lot. Definitely will. I can't believe that we first met at the end of February at Ghost Ships, and we're here today talking about finding the king. It's kind of amazing to keep this all under wraps for that long, but it's been exciting. Let me just introduce myself and a little bit about the shoreline and our organization, and just a little bit, a few more anecdotes, and that's it. But my name's Styles Meredith. I'm a volunteer captain and a director of shoreline operations for Friends of Plum and Pilot Island. Also, who was with us on the trip was Scott Nelson and Dawn Nelson. Both are ex-coasties and are volunteers for Friends of Plum and Pilot Island as well. Our group, just a quick summary, we basically use the shoreline to bring people to Plum and Pilot Islands so that we can talk about the historic preservation of the buildings and maritime history of the islands. It's important for us to maintain that mission. So we're excited to be able to use the shoreline for this, but we never thought that we'd be able to use it for other maritime things like finding the F.J. King. So when we learned that this was something that you guys wanted to do, we were very excited. So the boat, just real quickly, the boat is 1973. It was first built, and it was supposed to go to Vietnam and never did. It has a Kevlar hull on it to go up the Mekong Delta. Never made it there, but later on it was used for scuba diving in the Door County area for 30, 40 years and owned by Jim Robinson, like Brendon mentioned earlier. We keep it in Gills Rock, Wisconsin. And just to kind of talk about the day that when we came down to Bailey's Harbor to do the search, Scott and I left early Saturday morning and brought it down to Bailey's Harbor, and we pulled up to the dock, and Brendon was here with a big crew, and we plugged in the coordinates that he gave us, and we went out and started our search on the 2 by 2 mile grid, and that was an amazing search for sure. And to find it as quickly as we did was totally a surprise to all of us, but it was exciting, and I'm just glad it was great conditions. We had perfect weather that first day, and it was, we by finding it so quickly, we were able to spend the rest of the day searching, taking more pictures from the surface, and then, as Brendon mentioned, anchoring and putting the ROVs in the water so we could take pictures up close and personal. That was great to see that so close too. So that was the first day, and we kind of rinsed and repeated the next day. Brought another group out, and they got to see the wreck too on the sonar, and the sonars were just amazing how clear they were. And then we finally, Don was checking on the weather and said, we better get going. So we came back in. We kind of got chased off the lake for a storm. We got back in just in time, and it was quite an experience. And I've been a scuba diver for over 50 years, and I'll say that this is probably the most exciting things I've ever been a part of in my scuba diving and maritime history interests. So I want to thank Brendon and the Wisconsin Underwater Archaeology Association for trusting Friends of Plum and Pilot Island, and for us to help you find the F.J. King. So thanks a lot, you guys.
Thanks so much, Styles. We really appreciate it. Next up, we have one of our citizen scientists that was on the boat and was helped us run the sonar and helped us with the pretty much with every aspect of it, and piloted the ROVs. Joe Watermolen. Joe, what was your experience like?
Well, I got to say, after listening to all this and being through it, I started my career at the top. I guess this was my first time out doing anything like this. And it sounds like I hit the jackpot, and I should probably just cash it in and check out. But that being said, I kind of thought, I'm kind of more of a math guy. I'm not really philosophical, I guess, but a lot of this is, philosophically, it's a great story. And it's really kind of exciting to be part of the story. This story's been going on for 139 years or longer, right, when it was built. And just to feel like you can reach back in time like that and help, create a fabric of that story and be a little stitch in that fabric, which is kind of what I am. Like I said, it was my first time out. That was really great. The whole feeling, like I said, was hit the jackpot the first time, and it's great to be part of this story. And I'm not a young guy, but I wish I could impart to any of the younger people looking to do this and get involved in this. I certainly am going to try to stay involved as much as I can, and continue this, because it's just a great thing. But I want to circle back and just say thanks to the crew of the Shoreline. It was a safe day there, and thank you, Brendon and Bob and Kevin, for organizing, setting this all up. There was no reason to feel like it was a risky adventure at all. It was just fantastic all around.
Great. Thanks so much, Joe. I appreciate you coming on and sharing your experience, because it
Yeah.
really is a unique experience. Not many people get to go out and find, a shipwreck like that, especially, honestly, we didn't expect to find it, and that made it all the more special. So, I'm going to go ahead and switch gears and wrap things up here. Again, I want to just thank everybody who joined us today, and a couple of quick housekeeping things that I want to get out of the way, and I'd be remiss if I didn't uh, talk about this. A couple of unsung heroes that made this possible. Our WUAA board of directors. It's quite a big group. We're not a small organization. We've grown quite a bit. We have well over 100 members. I think I've lost count, around 130 or 40 or something. But two board members really helped make this possible. One is our field work and projects coordinator, Michelle Damian. She's an actual real underwater archaeologist. That's her day job at UW-Whitewater. And Michelle helps us coordinate these projects, make sure our PLPs are there, that we file the necessary reports, and advises us on what some of the pitfalls might be about projects that we decide to take on. So thanks to Michelle. And then also our equipment and training coordinator, that would be Alyssa Saldivar. And she also is a real professional underwater archaeologist who works at the Wisconsin Maritime Museum. And Alyssa helps us put on our trainings every summer. We offer a training on our side scan sonar, where we certify you to use it. And we offer a training on our ROVs, where we certify you to use them. And you're then able to use them for your own projects, provided you have a WUA docent present, just because we don't want you to be on the hook if you break it. And then the big thing I want people to come away from this with is that we're going to do this again next year. We've already got a wreck in mind, and we think we're going to take another citizen science group out to do another wreck hunt. And honestly, we may not find it. That's not the point of it. The point of it is to have the experience and rule out some bottom, and you never know. Maybe it is in that area we're trying to rule out. If you're interested in this sort of thing and you want to get out with us on the water, join the WUAA. It's $20 a year. I know that's pretty stiff, but if you go to www.wuaa.org, you can join our organization. And when the word comes out, you'll get our monthly member update. When word comes out about our trainings and about these public history projects, sign up. Come on up and join us. These, are once in a lifetime, I think, experiences. And, Bob and I have been finding a lot of wrecks recently, starting with the Trinidad in 2023, and then the Margaret Muir and the John Evanson, and then the riverboat, the LW Crane this spring. We thought, boy, it sure would be nice to share this with other people. And that's really our goal. So thank you, everybody, for joining. I want to thank everybody who participated in tonight's program. Thank you, Kevin Cullen. Thanks to Styles Meredith, and thanks to Joe Watermolen for joining us. And thank you all for joining as well. I'm going to be posting a Zoom room where you can come in live after this. It's going to be posted on the Great Lakes Shipwreck Research Group. I'm also going to post it in the chat. And if you want to join us for a live Q&A session after this, watch Facebook for the Zoom room link. And I will be there. I'm going to take about a 10-minute break. And so roughly at 8 o'clock Central Time, we will convene in the Zoom room. So thank you again, everybody. Oh, and this is going to be rebroadcast on YouTube, and shared on YouTube and saved there. So you can watch it again if you want to. All right, everybody. And do watch the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel and the other news outlets. We're going to do the national press release Monday morning so that this will be broadcast out to national media. All right. Thanks again, everybody. Have a good evening.